Hey, you're listening to Visibility Vixen, episode 7.
Well, and that's why we hit the record button today, because I'm in a pain pattern.
Yeah.
I'm in a migraine. And this is when we need to hear those voices saying, okay, where's your mind?
Welcome to the Visibility Vixen podcast, where we create space to grow our brand with intention and clarity, one episode at a time. Join us as we explore the many aspects of entrepreneurship, start loving the journey instead of the destination, and begin building a legacy that lasts. Here's your host, Michelle Lewis.
Okay, so we are here. We are actually doing this podcast coming from the RV. So we're in the RV. We're actually coming down for my birthday and celebrating at Disneyland. So we decided, why don't we bring this little snowball mic and record here? So today, what's really interesting is that I am just finishing up this month's Comfy on Camera Challenge, which has been fantastic, just wonderful seeing these women change their visibility and get more and more comfortable on video. And one of the main problems that they were struggling with is something called Imposter Syndrome. So they felt like, why should I be live streaming on my Facebook business page or my Periscope or my YouTube channel when I feel like I'm not necessarily the expert at what I do? Like, what qualifies me as an expert? Why should I be doing this when I feel like there's all these other people and all these other more successful entrepreneurs that have this same topic? So that really resonated with me, and we wanted to talk about that in today's podcast, because I decided to hit this record button because I am having one of those days. Even though I've just run a very successful challenge, even though everything is going really well, I just woke up this morning feeling off and feeling like a little bit of an imposter and feeling like, well, I've had all these other things fail in my past, so why doesn't this just fail too? So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to come to you in the reality, in the truth of it all, because we don't always wake up feeling on top of the world. Sometimes we wake up feeling like absolute crap. And that's when we need to come to our different family members, our friends, or come to these kinds of podcasts to get lifted out of that frequency. So,
Yeah. That's a mouthful.
Quite the mouthful. So I thought, Mom, you were talking a little bit earlier about how you had to look at the voices and the images of the past and retrain your mind for the present. And I think that would be a really beautiful illustration to talk to them about.
Well, I think everybody can relate to this, where they have... It doesn't matter if they're getting ready for a trip like I was this morning, or if they are going shopping, or maybe they're visiting relatives or whatever it might be. They could be exhibiting kind of odd behavior or reserved behavior, or having spilling things constantly or dropping things constantly. It could be that kind of idea. And usually, I have found from my experience, what that means is that the subconscious programming is very active, and all the creative juices we have stopped. It's like we're frozen in time, we're turned backwards, and we're accessing past information. Mm-hmm. So the subconscious was throwing up things, bad term, but was...
Not really.
Yeah, not really.
Accurate.
Yeah. Throwing up terms to me about childhood stuff that I have heard all my life, but here's the beauty of it. When you start getting out of your own head and looking backwards constantly, instead you start learning something. You start getting out of your patterns and you force yourself to learn something new. You are automatically changing your perspective, and you're moving in a forward direction, because learning is a forward direction. So when you stop doing that, then you go back into your robot-ish thing. So the robot-ish thing this morning was telling me I was not moving forward. So
But you're far enough in your journey where you can look at that objectively and go, oh, I'm not moving forward.
I'm not moving forward.
What's going on? And you can actually analyze your mind and your past.
Absolutely.
Which is huge.
It's huge, but it takes work, when you first get started with this. So I started seeing these patterns, and what my subconscious was doing was saying red alert here, red alert there. And because I've done the work to be able to hear it, in it compared to in the past when I would follow the programs and just be that.
Just be miserable for a week or 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So then I said to my subconscious, oh, I see what you're doing. You're trying to save me. You're trying to watch out for this. There's a bear at 3 o'clock. There's this. So I was able to say, thank you so much for that, but I don't need that program anymore. You can just relax, just chill pill. Isn't this wonderful? We're going to have a great time. And I was able to hit the delete button. No longer necessary. And all that stuff went away.
So, Dad, maybe you can speak a little bit to that pre-programming and how we reshape it and delete old tracks.
Well, you have to become, you have to train yourself to become the outside observer. So when you see a pattern of behavior that you're doing, say there's an incident that triggers anger, right? You kind of have to do a little homework to dig back. You have to get outside yourself. So I'm feeling angry right now, but where did that anger, where did this incident, it may not be this incident that made it rile up so big. What was the inciting incident that caused this to flare up this way? Why am I reacting so over the top to something that was so inconsequential? And if you dig back through, and you have to take time to meditate upon this too. You have to quiet your body down. You got to get into your mind, and not a lot of people like to do that because, listen, this takes homework. If you're going to change yourself, it takes homework. You cannot take a pill and all of a sudden, whoa, I'm a new, better person. Oh, look at me. I'm a great achiever. I'm getting all this stuff done. You know, you got to sit down and you have to listen to your mind, and a lot of people have a hard time doing that. You know, one exercise that I used to do, because our subconscious is an unreasoning computer. It absorbs all this information, and then what it does is it throws it all up, because it goes, oh, don't forget, you have to do this, you have to do this. So you go off on bunny trails following your subconscious. So one thing to sit down when you want to work on yourself, I used to do, and now I can kind of do this mentally, and I can file things away in different shoe boxes and say, okay, don't think about this, put the shoe in. And that's kind of the way I think of when I have to group things together. I put them in a file folder in my brain. I put it, okay, we'll think about that later.
Don't we all wish that we were such geniuses that we could just be our own brain librarian?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that, because when I want to do that, I think that...
That's your next website, thebrainlibrarian.com.
I think of me in there, and I'm putting these things in boxes. Oh, I visualize it, and I say, okay, I'm going to deal with this, but I'm going to put it in this box, and I'll pull that box out later, but now's not the time. Is one great exercise to do, if you want to sit down and work on yourself, is take a piece of paper and write down every thought that is currently coming up in your mind. Negative, positive. Just get it all out on a piece of paper.
I call that the white space exercise.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Because you've got to dump all the information out. Because what you're doing is you're training your subconscious when it's okay to bring up information you need. And so you get all that information, that's your worries, your fears, a to-do list. You can break it down into categories. You know, I call it the negative page. All the negative emotional things that are coming up, all the positive things, and then all the informational things on things you need to get done, right? So now you've told your subconscious, okay, thank you for bringing up all that information. It's all on a piece of paper. Don't worry, I won't forget about it. And then you can sit down and look at that piece of paper like a negative reaction to an encounter you have with a relative or a friend in this thing. Now you calm your body down, you go inside your mind and you think about it, and you tell your subconscious, okay, and it has to listen to you, but it responds, because you're the boss, it has to respond to instructions. And you suddenly go, all right, bring to me the image of where this first inciting incident that created this chain of over-the-top anger. And it might not come up the first couple of times, but eventually it has to bring that up, because you're requiring it to recall, and you're the boss. If you tell it to recall, it's got to bring that up. So it'll bring eventually, and it may be more than one incident too. It may be a chain of incidents. It may be just a flash of a picture. You might go back into the memory, but sometimes it's buried so deep, and if there was huge trauma involved with it, what your brain does is it takes that part and seals it off, so that because the injury was so traumatic that you can't have immediate access to it.
And then the body stores it in an organ, and then it insulates it in either bacteria, virus, fungus, or fat to protect it.
Exactly. So it may require some time to get to that, and you have to tell your subconscious it's okay to access. We're an adult human being now. We can deal with that. Bring it. What was it? And it will bring that up. And listen, it could be an emotional thing too, but you have to recall it, right? To then be able, because once you understand what that inciting incident was, then you can tell your subconscious, thank you so much for trying to protect me through, and usually it'll manifest in a pain, like you said, in an organ or a headache or an organ or muscle.
IBS, anxiety.
Exactly. And then
lack of sleep.
Then you can instruct it to say, thank you so much for trying to protect me with that, or, we don't need that. The physical reaction and the mental, emotional reaction that is tied to that inciting incident anymore, and please release that. We don't need it anymore.
So I think a good summation of the exercise that you're talking about as a daily practice, because for those of you that don't know, my dad's gift is vigilance. So he's really good at incorporating something and making sure to do it every single day. I get a smidge of that in terms of completing projects, but I am not as vigilant nearly as he is. It's definitely a gift. So what he's saying is we take out a sheet of paper every single morning to write out everything that we have to do, everything that's on our minds, and if we're having really pressing negative thoughts, to be able to identify what's that emotion, and then sitting down in our meditations or in our quiet time to ask our subconscious to bring up where that stemmed from. So I had to do this a lot because my go-to reaction was chronic migraines. I had them for a very long time. So my brain was just constantly on overload, constantly having crazy emotions. And Nathan, do you want to tell them when you met me?
Yes.
What I would do?
When I met Michelle, what was it, 5 years, 6 years? 6 years, I think.
Something like that.
But when I met her, she would have, she'd wake up and she would just text me or call me and say, I'm just having a bad day. So then I'd come down and spend the day with her on the weekend or whatever, because we were working together at the time. And she would not be able to get out of bed. She wouldn't be able to do anything for herself, really. And it was hard to see that. And she knew it was frustrating for her because she wanted to do things for herself, but just couldn't. And slowly we started working through it with different mind techniques and different just the healing, the natural healing that you found, and now to this day you're able to, on your worst day, you sleep until maybe 10 o'clock, and then you get up and you're doing everything around the house. I'm usually, I'm working, so you've been taking care of the animals and doing your business and everything. And so you've come up such a long way in 5 or 6 years because of being able to implement these things and that we've been talking about.
So we went on a journey last year, a year and a half ago, and we started a documentary, which you can find on my YouTube channel, called Healing Places in America. And it was before I got my doctorate in natural medicine, and what I really dove deep into is, okay, I know my body's healed now, but why is the pain still here? And through, Dad's help, Mom's help, Nathan's help, they really helped me get this on point. And I realized not everyone may have such severe issues like I did, but we all can relate to automatic failure mechanisms. And all of that relates in our business to feeling imposter syndrome, where we feel like we're not the expert, where we're completely swallowed in self-doubt, where we're so trapped that we're afraid to be visible. So we end up not putting up that social media post. We end up not writing that blog, not shooting that video, not launching that e-course, all due to fear and fear of being judged. So I really wanted to today, because we've all been through that in some way, shape, or form, talk about failure, what it is, and how to get out of that cycle.
Well, listen, it's like Edison, he's creating the light bulb. How many failures did he go through before finding, hey, this works, So when you're in your and to continue with just to wrap up our previous conversation, when you do that exercise, when you go through and you're trying to find out what's holding you back, the other thing you have to do is you have to set an intention for that day. You've got to be positive, and that's where you doing that meditation, you use your frontal lobe, because that's where we create from, and you've got to create the place you want to be. So if you want to see yourself, as a great podcaster, doing great training videos, creating a book, whatever it's going to be, you have to instruct your mind that this is where we're going, because your mind needs something to go to for the future, because your mind itself is an artifact of the past. It's got all our experiences and memories of everything we've done, but it needs instruction on where you want it to focus to go. And if you're not focusing on where you want to go, it's living in the past and all the bad things that happen to you. Mm-hmm. So you have to put that intention up every morning. But then in terms of failure, if you're concentrating your intention on where you want to go, listen, everybody's going to have missteps and failure, but that's part. Listen, it takes you 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, right?
Whoa. You're
not going to know. Most people who get their doctors and stuff, you spent thousands of hours studying, right? It takes that long. So you can't be afraid as you're, and one of the great things about doing videos, about doing courses, is you really have to study the material before you do it. Granted, there's some people who just wing it, and and you can tell that too. But if you're earnest, and each of us has a talent and a gift, right? And part of our mission here is to share that gift to help everybody else along the road to complete their journey, right? So as you help other people, it helps you. So when you're creating a book, a podcast, or you're just doing an interview show, part of that whole process is that you have to study the material. You're going to learn new things, and then interacting with other people is going to increase your knowledge, because no person has all the information themselves. And so you can't be afraid, I'm going to look stupid. Hey, listen, that's how you learn, is you make mistakes. So you can't feel that you're an imposter when you're giving your best, and your best is good enough,
Yeah.
And I think also there's another aspect to what you're saying, and that is feeling like you're an imposter is more often than not because of what somebody else says, and or comparing yourself to somebody else. Because you can't not be an imposter if you're following the innate fire of where you want to go. So here you are, oh my gosh, I think I want to, how can I make electricity kind of concept? Well, there was nobody like Tesla out there. But if Tesla had been thwarted by people saying, you can't do that, there's not that Tesla never would have done what he did. And that goes for all of us, that we listen to the wrong source, the wrong voice. We're not listening to our own inner strength. We're listening to the naysayers in our family, the naysayers online. Sometimes I don't even go on Facebook, because sometimes it's very cruel what people do. It can be really nasty. Sometimes it's wonderful, but you have to really be careful of who you're listening to, because if you're not accessing, like for you, Lady Entrepreneur, that was your thing, and if you hadn't accessed it because people said, what do you mean, da 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 da, you never would have done it. You never would have had the people in your life that you have, and they wouldn't have you as well. So we're listening to the wrong voice.
You can't let other people dictate who you are, and a lot of people fall into that trap of seeking love and acceptance, and the world doesn't validation. The world doesn't always work that way. If you have a vision of who you want to be, who you want to become, what you want to do, you've got to stay true to that. And no matter what other people say, listen, you imagine after Edison, at the first 50 times, oh, you're never going to create a light bulb, man. If he'd have given up this, oh, you're so right. We wouldn't have incandescent bulbs right now.
Well, and I remember reading about Tesla, and he knew that his time to create was when he was trying to sleep. He would see people's faces. And he'd know, I'm not going to sleep tonight, and he would get up and work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you would go to maybe a doctor or something, and they'd give you a drug so you'd fall asleep, but instead he knew that's whatever, the quantum field, the universe, God telling me it's time to create.
Interesting.
Well, something that whenever you started your business, it was we had to have a conversation. You know, starting any business, there's going to be bumps and hiccups along the way, and I think a huge thing that is you have to define your success. You have to define what is success to you, because success is different for everybody. You know, some people it's making $1 million, which, you know, you gotta rein it in a little bit sometimes. I mean, depending. And so I think the first thing you have to do is define your success, define what your goals are, and make, like, you have a dream board or a goal board, and, you know, and then you define that, and then you also have to have the confidence. And I think so much of it is not having confidence, and I had problems with confidence. I mean, when I first met my in-laws here, it was like, this is funny because I'm fairly skinny guy and tall and lanky, and Michelle told me after they met me the first time, they said, does he eat food? I was so shriveled, and so I would slouch and all this stuff, and, you know, through, you know, being successful at what I do, and just through confidence and working on myself, I'm not that way anymore.
Probably didn't help that I was sharpening kitchen knives
exactly.
when I first met you also.
But, you know, I think you have to find your confidence.
But that was a reflection, potentially, of the environment that you were in, coming into graduating from college, coming out
to a new
city, lots of fears, lots of things surrounding you.
Living in a closet.
In a closet.
Sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 people or 6 people.
Having a very, very, very strict budget.
Yeah.
And
so... Yeah, it was tense, and never knowing when the next job was going to be or anything like that. And
how many ramen noodles can you eat? Really?
I mean,
it was a burrito.
I still can't eat them.
He would go down the street and get one of these big burritos for I think $2. And he would cut it in half, and he would have one side for lunch and one side for dinner. Oh, yeah. That's what he did for months between work. Amazing.
But through that, I've found what I wanted for success, and I changed, you know, my way of being. Now I don't slouch anymore. I can look people in the eye when I talk to them, and
you filled out.
I filled out.
And I've taught you everything you know about exterior illumination.
Exactly, exactly. So.
Well, and I think that brings me to, sometimes we feel imposter syndrome because we're just starting out, and maybe we've failed at something. Maybe our blog hasn't gotten any views. Maybe our Facebook ads totally tanked. Maybe we can't understand how to build our email list, and so we have what's called list shame, which is actually a thing in the community.
Oh, wow.
Amy Porterfield was just talking about this. And for me, I thought I built my first e-course called Life Reboot, took my beta testers through it. It got rave reviews. So I thought, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to be this health coach. And it's going to be amazing. And then nothing happened. So I had spent 2 months, like 12 hours a day, building this course, shooting these videos, doing everything. And there was no payoff. And so I felt like such a failure. And I remember just crying on the floor of our 1-bedroom apartment. And Nathan sat me up, and I said, I failed. So I guess I have to go back to being a stand-in. And he said, why? And I said, because at least that's what I know how to do. That's what I've been paid for, and this hasn't worked. And he said, well, this one thing hasn't worked yet, but where's your heart? What do you want to do? And so I just, bless his heart for saying that to me. I just kept trying. I just kept trying. And it's okay if you don't have it completely figured out. You're going to try different systems. I started with one, and then I moved over to Teachable, and I started with MailChimp, and I moved over to ConvertKit. You're going to find these different...
Is that like Trunk Monkey?
It's okay. They don't understand any of this stuff, so it's okay.
Is that like... I just like to hit the easy button and it happens.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just because something may have appeared that it failed doesn't mean that it's not going to come in handy, or that you're not going to learn something to put you towards the next thing. Because now, like, I sell Video U, and right now we have bundled with it Life Reboot. So these
there you
things
go. It's
come
done.
in cycles, you know?
Well, here's the other thing, too. Is a lot of times you'll find yourself that you do a project, and it seems like it's not working, like successful. And actually what you're doing is you're laying the foundation that'll be something you're going to use later
And
in
need.
another project and need. I can't tell you the number of times I've had that with writing and scripts and working on projects. And this thing that I wrote that I shoved back in a drawer, I'm working on another project, and I said, wow, if I incorporate that into this, it could be great. And I've already done all the work for it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're creating parts that will become a larger part of a bigger thing.
And you have to have attention that lasts longer than a nanosecond. And with the new technology now, that's people's concentrations. It's, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Oh, that's old hat.
The lit match syndrome.
And I think that puts so much pressure on entrepreneurs because they have to constantly reinvent themselves. But that doesn't mean that they're unsuccessful or they're imposters.
No, because so much of my day-to-day is I wake up and I have to make a conscious choice to trust. And I didn't do that today. No, I did my, affirmations and all that, but I didn't have my daily ritual at the coffee shop because we were getting in the RV. And so I woke up feeling a little crabby and a little, crummy. And then it just progressed because I wasn't listening to my issues, and I also surely wasn't taking my mind under control and moving forward. So even though things were going great in the Facebook group, we had all this joy, it didn't affect my core because I wasn't aligning with the trust that I need to have and the momentum that I have.
As a holistic healer, we both know that when that happens, it affects the body. Mm-hmm. So it could, like we've talked about, could be a headache, it could be a stomach ache. And if people only knew how tuned in the tissues, the cells, the organs are to what is going on in your mind, it would blow them away. And I think it would, everybody would literally stop what they're doing and go, oh my gosh, you mean my reaction to my little brother or what I just said to my mom or what I did at work, etc., is going to affect me personally inside my body? Mm-hmm. I mean, it would revolutionize how they move, how they think.
Well, and that's why we hit the record button today, because I'm in a pain pattern.
Yeah.
I'm in a migraine. And this is when we need to hear those voices saying, okay, where's your mind? Where are your thoughts? What's your subconscious doing? What memories are coming up? And for me, I thought, well, everything's fine. And then it's like, oh, well, but remember this pain that hurt your heart yesterday? And it's like, oh, yeah, because
the body does.
Yeah, the body does. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get your attention whether you like it or not. So these doubts and fears and insecurities that surround imposter syndrome always come from a feeling I feel just in my life of not feeling enough, not feeling worthy. So we doubt everything, and we don't want to hit the record button on a video or a podcast or expose ourselves on a blog because what's the point? Mm-hmm. I'm not worthy of it. Mm-hmm. I'm not enough, and on and on and on we go.
And that might be applied to women that you've had in your courses even that did not finish the videos.
Yeah.
Because they have that negative self-talk going on.
Oh, yeah. And I never judge or get upset when that happens because I've been there.
Yeah.
And I know what that's like to just feel completely paralyzed by that automatic failure mechanism.
Well, listen, joy is a choice too. Because if you don't have joy in what you're doing, you're doing the wrong thing. So, and you have to, in addition to setting your intention for what you want to do in a day, you have to say, instruct your mind too. I choose joy today. No matter what happens. Yep. Listen,
because joy is a frequency.
Yeah, it is. It's like 528 hertz. It's like the love frequency. It's a frequency, and so you have to tell your mind what frequency you're going to work at that day. Even if you feel bad, if you put your intention, I'm going to choose joy, it goes, the subject, we're choosing joy today. Okay, put together all the chemicals to find joy.
You stole the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to say this. If you challenge yourself to wake up and tell yourself, I'm going to choose joy and I'm going to have joy, and if you are diligent about it and you go all day, and if you start feeling a negative thought pattern or anything, and you tell yourself you're going to choose that joy, it's impossible to fail. A failure, Michelle used her first course that she created as an example of what she thought was a failure, and you got to change. If you have joy, you're able to change your way of viewing it, and rather than saying, oh, I didn't make any sales, so therefore it's a failure. It's, no, you learned how to build an entire e-course, and not just a simple basic e-course. You built one that's super in-depth with videos and challenging. You have to look at all the benefits that you've had, all the positive things, and if you do that, failure isn't an option, because there's nothing you can do, and you know, not as long as you have a good intention for it, you can always find something good that comes out of it.
Well, listen, to everything you do, there's a spiritual component also. So out of that course you did, if you help one person, you succeeded. Because if you can change one person's mind,
there's no failure.
And help, there is no failure. Listen, we tend to think we have to monetize everything, that success isn't money. That's not
so true.
It's so true.
But that's not true, because listen, you know, there's a bird flying around there worry about how much money he's making. He's just looking for the next place. He has fun. He comes out. He gets in the fountain. You know, it's
that the end of that word was he gets in the fountain.
Yeah,
Sometimes he goes into South Carolina accent.
Yeah, forget. But you know, but you look at a bird. They're having joy. They're having fun out there, right? Well, you know, we're designed to operate that same way, and so, but we're spiritual beings also. So if you're helping other people, that also goes out in the quantum fields, and that brings joy back to you.
Well, that's interesting, because I was just sitting here, and when you asked me that question, what came to my mind is that I helped myself. I built that course, and that's when I was really struggling with my pain patterns, and the migraines were constant. And it makes me emotional, because every day I purposed, no matter what my pain was, I was going to work on my course. And and there were days where I didn't want to, and it was so painful, but I made myself, because I knew that someone out there needed to know it, but I also knew that I needed to know it, and I needed to claim it. And, you know, we really focused on different emotions every week. We focused on different herbs and oils to really move us forward into growth. And that course really changed my life. So beyond what it does for other people, and we always want to help our ideal client. Of course, we want to change lives, but the most important thing is that we first change ourselves.
Right.
And I think that's a really interesting thing that just popped in my head, that course was a success because it enabled me to do what I do now for ladypreneurs.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, and this happens if you're able to sit down with somebody, or even get into a meditation. You're going to start getting into these deep things, and then you're going to start realizing these things you thought were failures are actually like things that have changed you in such a way that no other person could do. You had to go through this experience yourself in order to change yourself.
Which means that society cannot tell you what's a failure.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And that's I feel the biggest cause of people saying that they've failed is what society says you're a failure, you know, and it's like,
well, in comparisonitis.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
and that's what society does, is they compare it to people, you know. Oh, you're a singer, but you're not making money, or you didn't make it onto American Idol or whatever. It's like, that doesn't mean you failed. You're a singer. If you have a voice and you could sing, you're a singer.
Exactly.
You know? It's just funny.
Well, and I think wrapping up, I think we can all agree that from what we talked about today, we really have to make active choices. So if you're listening to this podcast today, do it with me, since I'm in a pain pattern. Today, we're going to say, I choose joy. So if you're in your car, if you're working out, whatever you're doing, just say out loud, I choose joy.
With a smile.
With a
With a
smile.
smile, yeah.
I choose joy. And do that white space exercise that my dad mentioned. Write all that stuff out and start really figuring out where these emotions, where these imposter syndrome feelings are coming from. Deal with that past memory. Tell the subconscious, thank you so much, but I don't need that memory anymore. And then start creating new patterns. And the only way that we can create new patterns is by being vigilant. So the moral of the story, be like Dad.
Be
Or not.
Vigilant.
Be
And
vigilant.
don't believe everything you read or see or hear.
Right.
Instead, you're the only one that can determine if your podcast or your work that you're doing online is of value. Stop listening to all the drama.
And just trust and keep moving forward.
Because when we don't, it literally is like glue. It comes into our body and on top of our body, and we are held down by forces that are so strong. Condemnation.
Yeah. So stay in alignment, stay vigilant, And no matter what, keep moving. Keep moving towards your passions. Keep moving towards your ideal client. And always, always, always create. And that's what we're going to leave you with today. Hope you've enjoyed the RV podcast. It's our first one. I'm sure there'll be many more. And we just want to really minister to you today and let you know that you are enough. You are worthy. So get out there today and do something amazing.
And have some joy.
Thanks for listening in today to the Visibility Vixen podcast. Subscribe now and share with a fellow Vixen who wants to start building their visibility. For more fire in your life and brand, visit visibilityvixen.com.